Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare, old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in person or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. If you have children and have been looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah! In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 3, Episode 2, The Talking Clue, as returning guest, Rich Roney. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm enjoying this research and just delving into all these adventures. It's my fondness and appreciation for George Reeves continues to grow.
Right on. And here we have a Bill Henderson-centric outing in which Henderson's son, who collects sounds, is seemingly implicated in a string of burglaries. This aired on April 30th, 1955, written by David Chandler, directed by Harry Gerstad. We have Billy Nelson as Muscles McGurk, Julian Upton as Claude James, and Richard Shackleton as Ray Henderson. Before we get into our breakdown, overall feelings or impressions about this one?
I think this was just representative of the few episodes of Season 3 I've already watched. So I'm very consistent. It was intriguing to show the family side or the aspects of Henderson's life. We're going to get into that more. I noticed they conveniently made Henderson a widower, right? So that stood out to me. And I do want to talk about Henderson's perception and treatment of his son. It didn't sit. It really didn't sit as well with me as I would have liked. Not that there was any abuse or hostility or malice, but aspects of it, and we'll get to it. I know you've got kind of a logical process for this.
Now, I hear you though. Like, I'm glad overall. I am generally happy when one of the supporting cast members gets a spotlight episode. So to spend more time with Bill and to see some of his family and home life, I'm all for it. In terms of the execution, I don't know that it totally came together, but overall, I think this was a solid Henderson spotlight and showcase.
This and that one with Frank Donnelly are the two that stand out to me to showcase a little bit more of Bill Henderson.
Okay, so as we make our way into our episode here, Clark participates in a police lineup to help Henderson, who is trying to nab bank robbers Claude James and Muscles McGurk. Claude is in custody, but the bank teller cannot ID him, and McGurk is in the wind. Okay, I have a problem right from the jump. This is not how police lineups work. What was this? We lost Rich.
No. I am stunned. I'm stunned. This was so baffling.
And then you have a lineup in front of a witness so that the witness can potentially identify.
What purpose did this serve, right? There was no witness. It was Henderson.
It was just Henderson and interrogating.
And quite frankly, all you had, the other two guys on the stage they didn't voice anything, right? I did like how insolent Clark was, insolent and like kind of a little kind of like sarcastic and surly. I got a lot of names,
Yeah, that was a nice little moment where Henderson says, "What's your name? Which one?" It's like, "How many do you have?" "Several." And then he asks him about it later in the next scene, and he's like, "Oh, I just thought it'd be something to say." But a nice nod to his dual identity. But it's just like that's not how this works. But okay.
And a little different with Henderson, right? Remember the early episodes? He'd roll up his sleeves.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get the answer out of you, right? Pre-Miranda.
Yeah, I know that season 1 episode. I mean, Clark and Henderson very clearly have worked over their suspect there. But yeah, we're in season 3. It's much softer, much lighter. But anyway, we start with that police lineup. And then in Henderson's office, Clark meets Bill's son, Ray, who is an amateur sound collector and is there to record the teletype machine with his tape recorder. When an officer brings Claude in and asks for a file from the safe, Claude takes notice. Henderson gets word that Muscles had been captured, and Clark races off to file the story. So this is where we meet Bill's son, Ray. What are your impressions of this young man?
Okay. So what really did impress me was how Ray was the quintessential, clean-cut, circa middle class, middle America, 1950s, wholesome, clean-cut kid. That really stood out to me. He's so polite. He's wearing like a jacket and tie. On a more humorous level, what really stood out to me was his hobby, right? And do you want to give it from your briefing, and then I'll give my commentary?
I mean, like I say, collect sounds with his tape recorder. I mean, that's his thing. And so he's got this whole catalog of different sounds. Well, and we'll get into it more when Lois and Jimmy go to his room to do the story about a lion's roar, the sound of Superman flying.
Well, what I loved here, before he starts getting the teletype, and when Claude comes in and Bill Henderson has to unlock the safe, just before that, as Clark is going, hey, gee, Ray, you've grown up. It's been a while. They shake hands. And Ray lets his couple of sounds go, and Clark tries to guess. And he goes, I bet you won't know what this is. And he plays this tape, and Clark goes, what is that? Oh, that's bullets bouncing off Superman. And this is my best moment of the whole episode. I saw a flashback to the Clark I love from season 1, where all of a sudden you've got edge and impatience, and where'd you get that, right? So for the benefit of your listeners, I said it too fast. I stammered. Ray runs some recordings, lets Clark hear what they are. At one point, Ray had recorded bullets bouncing off Superman, and he explains it to Clark. And Clark had this edge and annoyance and impatience, and it was just a flashback to the whole Miss Backrack things, because he was like, there was so much seriousness and almost edge in his voice. Where'd you get that? And I figured, Lil Alan Harper's going to have a playmate up on Superman Mountain.
Yes.
And I even envisioned the two young guys meeting. Like, Ray meets Alan. What are you here for? I took a picture. What are you here for? I made a recording. So I loved it how once you get too close to Clark's identity, there's going to be a trip to Super. I thought Clark was going to go, Ray, get some warm clothes.
That's amazing. Well done. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that little glimpse, that little hint of season 1, Clark. I love that flash as well. I'm glad you brought that up. That was amazing. I guess overall I had a similar impression. How old do you think he's supposed to be, Ray?
I would say 18.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, he's obviously still living at home. Well, that we've talked about that on the Jimmy front. That's not necessarily determinative, but I agree. Like a quintessential, good, wholesome kid. I guess as a podcaster, I really kind of like the idea of this sound collector bit. And it was interesting. I mean, like, this was a kind of a novel idea at the time that he's going around with his tape recorder and recording all of these sounds. So yeah, I don't know. That was kind of cool to me. Oh boy, this next scene. In Perry's office, Jimmy accidentally drops a pot of glue all over the chief. Meanwhile, Muscles and Claude are out on bail and playing card games. Muscles hints at a plan to get Henderson. What do you make of this glue scene?
I thought it was filler.
Yeah.
I was convinced it was filler. I vaguely, as a child watching the show, I don't remember that scene occurring. So I assumed they might have cut it. It easily could have been cut. It didn't add to the story. But once again, it's more the comedy, the silliness, Jimmy has become comic relief. And it plays right to John Hamilton being the curmudgeon and the cranky guy. But it really didn't have any relevance whatsoever.
I agree about it potentially being filler. It definitely had that feel to it. It went on too long for it to just be, it's just like a quick little fun aside. Like it ate up enough time where, maybe
we got to fill 2 minutes.
Yeah, maybe they needed to fill a couple of minutes because it doesn't connect to anything else. To your point, it lifts right out of the episode. But I guess Perry has requested glue, and Jim brings in this whole pot of it and stumbles and spills it all over the chief's desk and hands and whatnot. And I mean, he really goes off on a rant. He's like, I've tried to lead a good life.
I gave to the poor.
I give to the poor.
I took care of my mother.
I keep my shoes polished and my nose clean. What have I done to deserve this? So in and of itself, it's fine. It's just like, it feels bad a place here, but that's fine. And then Muscles and Claude, they're playing the game Old Maid. Do you know this game?
I know it existed, but I'm not an aficionado.
I'll be perfectly honest. I wasn't even familiar with Jack Straws, but I
nor was I.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just because I'm old.
Well, no, because, and I have more to say on this, but my wife, this was the one episode my wife watched with me. And when we were watching, I'm like, what are Jack Straws? And she's like, you don't know what Jack Straws are? I'm like, no, I don't know. So,
Anthony, I don't either.
So I thought it was just me. Yeah, I think the idea is you dump them out and then you have to like remove them without making the whole thing collapse or something like that. That's the gist of it. But in any event, we have the two of them hiding out. When I watched this, I'm like, how does Muscles come up with this plan? Which we'll get into, but I guess presumably Claude has talked to him about what he saw in Henderson's office with the recorder and the safe.
They did make a point. Claude seemed to hone in on down when Bill Henderson went down to flip the dial.
It's just weird that now Muscles is the one who like has this whole scheme, but presumably.
And they're really playing to the tropes of bad guy names.
Yes. Muscles McGurk. Yeah. At Clark's recommendation, Lois and Jimmy show up at Ray's bedroom to do a story on his sound collection. Muscles, who no one seems to recognize, shows up at Ray's bedroom door and buys his latest recording for $100. I looked this up. That's close to $2,000 today.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And this doesn't raise any alarms.
The front door was open.
And this isn't the first time this isn't the last time in the episode where Muscles will show up at this kid's room.
Yeah.
At the police inspector's house. The security exceedingly lax. And this is in this scene, I guess, but before the Muscle shows up, this is where we get we get to hear more of the sounds that Ray has collected and all that. And there's some humorous bits where Jimmy really thinks that he's experiencing it live, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he hears Superman flying, he's like, Superman's coming, right? That's
you're right. I forgot about that. But yeah, when Ray plays, because he does it later on, and we'll get to that. But when he plays Superman flying and landing, Jimmy's convinced he's here, and he just jumps up and runs around. Yeah. And Lois had to go, Jimmy, calm down.
Why does no one recognize Muscles?
I don't know. I mean, as we know, this show doesn't go deep in supporting characters or,
Now, I don't mean to beat up on little Ray Henderson, but I think this is a valid question. Should he not have been more savvy about this, right? Because when we jump ahead a little bit and he's being questioned about selling this tape to Muscles, he claims he didn't know who Muscles was. And Ray's theory is, maybe he saw the article in the paper.
And then Lois had to go, well, no, he came a day before.
It's like, hey, dum-dum, we were there to interview you for that future story. So, I mean, I don't know. Is this kid, clearly we know by the end of the episode, he's not up to anything nefarious, but is he?
You raise a tremendously good point. And I think the point is when you look at the economics of the day, right? Like Lois's big thing is, I hope I get a $10 raise so I can buy a new hat. And then if this guy is giving the equivalent of $2,000, shouldn't your antenna go up? It didn't, obviously.
Yeah, and this is not. It's funny these days, right? With social media, you can always get your like the idea of being a collector of any kind. Sure, like any number of people could know about this and seek you out, but it's just. Especially for the police inspector's son. Like, I would have expected a little bit more
street
reasoning.
Smarts?
Yeah, a little more street smarts, reasoning ability. But I don't know. Maybe this is an example where, we estimated him to be like 18. Maybe he's meant to be younger. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. But He lost a few points in my book.
Okay.
This. Oh man, we're coming up on the moment that really made my wife laugh, which I'll talk about. Clark and Henderson are conferring when they get word of a robbery at the secret weapons lab. Superman shows up and apprehends Claude, who knocks himself out by running into the door.
Which we've seen before, right? With the face and the voice.
Yep. But Muscles gets away. In the following days, 5 more robberies are committed where the alarm systems are short-circuited. Bill reveals to Clark that he had created a report on the weaknesses of the city's security systems, as he has a background in electronics, and that he had recorded his report on Ray's system. So there's a written report that was stored in the safe, and he also, I guess, dictated it into this recording.
So as we were going through this, that stood out to me. It reminded me of a much later episode when Perry was the scientist, right? But here, just Clark was so emphatic. Oh, that's right, Bill. You did study electronics.
Yeah. That was the moment that really made her laugh. She was still awake at that part.
Yeah. That's right, Bill. You did study electronics.
Yeah, because Bill's like, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and then Clark's like, oh, that's right. Yeah, you
did,
And she laughed, and I'm like, yeah, like, this is the thing. I'm like, whenever they need someone to have a background in any field, all of a sudden it comes up. And I mentioned the Perry as the chemist, which we'll get to in a future episode. Yeah.
Okay.
Whether you're an independent filmmaker or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals. Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which will continue with more great Smallville and Superman talk even after their series coverage concludes. Listen wherever you get podcasts. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. The confrontation at the weapons lab, I mean, other than the silliness of Claude knocking himself out, was fine. Oh, that's funny because Superman bursts through the wall. He's covered in all the dust. And then instantly gone in the next shot.
Gone. Yeah. And you'll see that there was an episode I saw a while ago where Perry was like locked up in some closet or something, and it was next to a building where there's a bad fire, and he had soot all over him. Next scene, hair's perfectly combed, suit's dry cleaned, and it was the same thing here. Superman comes in covered in dust. Next frame, he looks immaculate.
Yeah. We go with it. Next, Clark brings in Ray, who admits to unwittingly selling his tape to Muscles, but he insists he had erased Bill's recording and that he didn't know who Muscles was. Bill is troubled and suspends himself from the force. So after the scene in Henderson's office, where we have this questioning of Ray, we then get a real extended scene between Clark and Bill at the Daily Planet at the window. Talking about that. What did you make of this?
Well, before that, there was Bill's tone and his treatment of his son. Bill was kind of like, he wasn't belligerent or abusive, but he was really like annoyed at his son. And he was convinced his son was doing inappropriate stuff or untoward stuff. So I thought Bill was too harsh on it. I thought he was too harsh. He didn't try to look at it at all from his son's perspective. That irked me. But then, as you said later on, they went to the window in Clark's office, which we've seen many times before with, Bet-A-Million Butler and with Frank Donnelly. I wonder, do they close these doors when it starts raining? I mean, but you could tell the friendship that Bill leans heavily on Clark, and there's a degree of friendship and respect and camaraderie there.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that scene probably could have been trimmed a bit, but I feel it went on for quite a while. But I know I liked seeing that friendship, that bond, that trust, like you said. And I don't disagree. I think in terms of his initial reaction to Ray, I mean, kind of faulting Ray for not being savvier, right? Letting the stranger into the house, selling the tape for such an absurd sum, which should have raised some flag. I understand maybe being frustrated from that perspective, but even entertaining the idea that Ray was like up to something did feel a bit out of character for a father, and this father in particular. But I think to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe part of the reason was so then you give Bill somewhere to go, right? Because then he goes to Clark, and you see how this is weighing on him and everything. So
that's a good point. The anxiety he was feeling.
Yeah. So I think it works on that front. And it was nice to kind of see that more personal moment between the two of them. Muscles returns to Ray's room and takes him, his recorder, and his tapes to see what else is on them. Though Ray is, at last, savvy enough to leave behind pieces of tape as a clue. The Daily Planet crew and Henderson pieced together that Ray was trying to convey Echo Canyon, which is where Muscles brought him. Ray tricks Muscles into thinking Superman is overhead by playing a clip of Superman flying. Muscles flees right into a waiting Superman who throws a boulder into the path of the car. This guy is just always in Ray's room. I mean, but I do appreciate that at least here, finally, Ray has some wits about him. Did you like this whole sequence of the Daily Planet crew and Henderson like piecing together? Like they play the pieces of tape and then start
just
to put it together.
prior to that. And again, this is not me as a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old watching this. But watching it now, I mean, those snippets of tape were so tiny, right? And when Ray picked up all his tapes and left with Muscles, there were a lot of tapes. How did he isolate the exact two sounds, right? And it was so small, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was physically impossible to, even when Clark spliced them together. I noticed they didn't let Perry use the tape recorder because we've seen in prior episodes where he's not exactly tech savvy.
Yeah.
The exercise around Perry's desk where they played the things and they went through what ideas come to your mind? What do you think? That reminded me of the broken statues when I noticed they didn't use any chalk.
Yeah, they didn't bust out the chalkboard.
Yeah, they didn't. They said, you know what? We're not doing the chalkboard on this one. So that analysis exercise, what does this seem to you, was very reminiscent of the broken statues. They did give us a little more time, what was that, Jimmy? Echo Canyon? Echo Canyon?
Yeah, right. So they each come up with what they hear, and so we get this kind of battery of words, and then Clark has them each go around and put the words in different combinations. And finally, when they land on Echo Canyon, it's like, oh, Echo Canyon, that's where he is.
And McGurk had a hideout there 10 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So finally, in our climax here, or actually our denouement, back at Henderson's office, it's revealed that Claude and Muscles wanted the tape because Ray was inadvertently recording while Henderson opened the safe, which revealed the combination. So we got our explanation in this final scene here in Ray's office, and all's well that ends well.
Yeah, father and son reconciled, and you got the vibe that Inspector Henderson was going to be maybe devote a little more attention to his son as opposed to burying himself in his work and letting the kid have the hobby as a solo. So you got the vibe that they were going to, maybe interact more in the future. For me, okay, and then there's other episodes we've discussed over the years. For me, far and away, the best thing here was when I saw the flashback to Clark from season 1.
Yeah.
That made this whole episode for me. Because for 1 microsecond, he was you're in trouble now. You're starting to sniff around or sense my identity. Where'd you get that? So I liked that moment.
So are we ready to rate the episode? On a scale of 1 to 5, Great Caesar's Ghosts, how many would you give this one? The Talking Clue. You gave Through the Time Barrier 2.5. I gave that 2.
You know what? This is hard. I'm going to go with 2.5 again. Okay.
I think I'm going to stick with mine as well of a 2. Part of me even feels like that's a little generous, but this, I don't know. I give it points whether I should or not for shining the spotlight on Henderson and showing a little bit of that home. Because I guess I always long to see more of that with our characters and delve into the personal at least a little bit. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to stick with my same rating. We'll go 2 again.
Okay. I was vacillating between 2.5 and 2. I think this is just a characteristic of. I think you're going to hear a lot of 2.5s from me.
Yeah.
Though I might, as this progresses and we see other episodes, I agree with you. That's a good point. Just a little bit of the spotlight on Henderson outside of work, and also kind of like his ethics. Hey, I resigned. I'm stepping away.
Yeah, to see that level of of ethical duty from someone in power is refreshing. So, yeah, credit to Henderson. All right, thank you so much for joining me for this.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next time for The Lucky Cat. Until then, as always, only Superman can do super things. Support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Links are in the show notes. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today.